Hello, and hope your day is going well. I decided to go mobile. I'm recording on my phone, on my mobile microphone outside in the backyard with my doggies. It's a pretty nice morning. It's supposed to get up to the 80s today, but underneath shade trees and the wind's blowing gently. Oh, there's a leaf that just fell. So if you hear the dogs barking, that's just their natural state of talking, or the birds chirping. You just know that you were outside with me. I got my coffee, just relaxing. And while I was walking today, I was thinking about my last podcast and about military recruiters. So I decided I want to just jump in, give you a connection with what I do and with military illumination and the military's lifestyle. So welcome. My name is Gary. This is Military Illumination, a podcast where we discuss things that matter to you or should matter to you, but are not widely supported by the military or the government. In essence, we talk about things the military, the Department of Defense, the armed forces don't want you to know. But it will help. It's for anyone who's interested in maybe joining the military, especially if you're 18 to 24, or someone who's in and is just maybe going through a rough patch or wondering what your next steps are. Hopefully we can open up the truth to you to help you in the decision-making process either way. So one thing as I was walking my dog, actually it happened a couple of days ago when I was driving to my lighthouses. I do pictures of lighthouses, but I'm digressing. I'm sorry, I apologize. But anyways, I Googled military recruiters harassment. Then I also Googled military recruiters sexual harassment, right? And a whole bunch of stuff came up. It was like mind-blowing. It was three types of things that came up. The first type of thing that came up, or that I just clicked on, had to do with harassment towards people who decided not to join the military, or who decided after talking to the recruiter to do not go into delayed entry program, to get out of that delayed entry program. In essence, they found another way of achieving what they wanted to achieve, but the recruiters wouldn't let it go. It talked about how there was harassment, either on the phone, they'll just blow their phone up with calls, like robo-type calls, emails, and even verbal in-person intimidation tactics, telling them that they got to go in, telling them they had no choice, right? That's harassment. These are recruiters that at one time when they first meet a person, they're gleaming with a 5-mile smile, the chest is puffed out, all the medals are gleaming, they're saying all the good things about the military, they have that attitude of integrity. Then it switches quickly to abuse once the person changes their mind. Mm-hmm. That talks about how the military really is. Because if the recruiters are the face of the military, then that should indicate to a person what they're in for after the military, once they get in. That's something that they really have to understand about. It's what it's like. It's a foretelling. Another type of articles that I came across was articles talk about how they're being predators against young women. It's probably some young men who most of the time they're high school kids, most of the time they're barely 18. But it talks about, now these are court cases that were coming up on these news articles. These are Newsweek article types of things. Newspaper, sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape. Yeah, even rape. Sexual assault, whether it's unwanted touching, forcible entry, or anything in between that. Even just calling a name outside of their gender to humiliate them is harassment. And these are military recruiters. Now, I'm not saying all military recruiters are that way, but it's just enough to sway up this. It's just enough to shine a light on the real life issues in the military. Okay? We talk about how over 13%, 15%, and this was in the low area. There's times where it got as high as 20%, sexual assault, sexual harassment in the military against people that are in the military. In most cases, by someone in their chain of command. You can Google it. That's your homework. But if you look at what's happening before they get in, that should tell you a telltale sign of what's happening when you get in. Okay? You understand that? Now, the third, that's what we're talking about on the harassment side, the physical side of it, right? These are court cases. On the third thing that military recruiters were accused of or have done, right? Of course, I'll tell the fourth thing, but I won't get there in a second, was in their contracts, being vague in their contracts. Now, this is going straight to the military, right? How they're making promises that's not in the contract. Handwritten, added to the contract. Even if the recruiter handwrites it and adds it to the contract, it is not part of the contract. Do you understand? The only thing that is part of the contract is what's the government put there in the printing office in ink. I guess we say it's going to be ink or printed, typed in. That's the contract. Whatever the DD form is, that's the contract. Anything verbal or handwritten or attached isn't part of anything. All that is just manipulation. So when you look at the military contract, it omits the Ferris Doctrine, which is the most powerful thing a person needs to know, and which I talked about before. It omits harassment. It omits if you get sexually assaulted and you want to get out, right? You're not going to get out. You get out under other than honorable discharge in many cases, right? But now you're out with baggage, right? So they don't tell you that, so they're omitting those things, and that's a lie. If you don't fully disclose the situation, then three things: a person is making a decision on incomplete information. You are being, I would say, you're falsifying. You're less than truthful. That's how the military says it, right? And you're hiding things. Okay, so those are the things that when you think about the military recruiter, what it really represents. The military recruiters represent the face of the military and what you can expect when you get in. Now, for you guys who are pro-military, God bless America, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that if it's on both sides. But if it's used as a manipulation device, integrity, what do we say? How do you just find a word? I can't. That patriotism, if it's only one-sided, and the one-sided comes from is from the person who's going in, not for the government, then it really isn't. They're manipulating, they're using that to get what they want. I keep saying manipulation, that's what it is. All right, so as you think about it, as you go in, there's the everyday stuff that happens that no one talks about. I'm a prime example of everyday military recruitment tactics that no one talks about. Half the time, people blow it off thinking it's just that one incident, but it's not. Sometimes people blow it off because they don't know what to do. Sometimes people blow it off because there's nothing they can do, especially once they're in. I think a really good movie that I saw that, it's a long, older movie, I'm giving my age away, Private Benjamin. And that's a really good example of what military recruiting is all about. Private Benjamin. Check it out if you can. You won't have to look at the first part of it because that's what it all happens at. Anyway, I was told that I explicitly told the recruiter, because I was a poor kid, large family. I was ideal. Sorry for that. I take some coffee. Military recruitment, what they look for. But anyways, I explicitly said that I wanted to work, yes, but I also wanted to go to school. My dad was sick, and ill, and I was going to send money home. I was sending money home. But I wanted to be able to pursue my dream of going to college. And I told this guy, I said, I want a shift job where I can go to school. Maybe at school at night, go to night school. And he originally had me under the missiles, the night missiles, and those are stationary targets from what I understood. Not targets, but stationary type duty, rotation type of things. And I was fine with it. And then he called me and he changed up on me. And they do that. They changed up on me for whatever reason. I guess it's based on numbers. It's also based on when I wanted to leave. I wasn't hot to try to get out of there, out of San Diego. So that could have been it. But then he showed me it was the communications. And he showed me the insides. This guy, the picture, the guy actually had a shirt and tie on. and all these mainframe computers in there. And he had a clipboard. He was looking up. I remember that picture. I was only 19, but I remember that picture. And actually, I was probably, anyway, make a long story short, signed up. I go to base training. It was no fly because base training was easy for me. It was nothing. I've been doing that stuff since I was 12 years old. It was ROTC, some other paramilitary organizations I was part of at the youth. I was indoctrinated, so it was nothing for me. I remember one time we were getting picked up in processing station. They were recruited and they come up to me and in my face and just, yeah. And I eventually I was looking at them straight up. I had nothing on his face. I was stoned. And I would say, get it off your chest. I said, get this everything off your chest and get away from me. That's what I was thinking in my head. And it must have came across my face because he looked at me and he moved on. Yeah, I was nothing to mess with, but I was ideal military. I was indoctrinated to the hilt. Anyway, make a long story short, I get to the training and I see these trucks with these shelters on the back of it. And we're going towards them. We're going past them. And we're going to our first training station. It's like the first day we were in these cattle cars. And I asked, what are those campers? What are those campers? What are those things? And the drill sergeant, the guy or sergeant in charge of us said, no, those are what you guys work out of. So, oh, really? And it was combat support. And there it was. At the end of the story was the idea of going to college was out the door. I was on the move. I would say 7 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year. The other one, we were doing training, or we had extended deployments. And then when I did go ask to take some courses, right, my commander as a private said no. It wasn't only until I was 5 years into the gig that I was able to start taking classes. He said, this is a 3-year commitment I initially started at. How did it go from 3 years to 5 years? It's a long story. And I could have gotten out. But here's the end of the story. Had I had the guidance, had I had insight, it would have been different. And that's what I wanted military illumination to be like. And there's a lot of things out there if you just search for it. My dad had passed away. He was career Navy. A year after he retired, a year to the date after he retired, he started throwing up blood. We went down to the Navy Air Station, would be the hospital there. The clinic, it might as well be. And by the afternoon, he was in Everett. He had a coma, he had a tumor. He lasted a couple of years, and then he passed away. 22 years in the Navy, 3 years, probably about 4 years after he was dead. Military related. Yeah. The chemicals he was dealing with in those times got him. Anyway, make a long story short, and when I went home to his funeral, and the college, I went to the community college. I still was right there at that teeter-totter position, which means that I only had a couple of years a year or two before I had to get out. And they were closed. They were closed. Let that sink in. Had that office been open, had that school been open, had I been able to talk to a counselor, I wouldn't be talking to you today. My life would have been different. I would say it would have been immensely different because I'm not carrying that baggage and PTSD type of stuff with me now. And even when I was in Fort Bragg, even though I was stationed at Fort Bragg, even though I was there, I would go to the learning center. I spent time in learning center just reading and researching school. I want to go to law school at that time. And I'm digressing, but it all really just talks about, but then I saw how much it was for law school. And I said, I can't do that. But at that moment of time, I didn't know that you had to go to 4 years, you get your bachelor's, and then you move on. Because no one told me. When you're living a life of poverty, a military life, family existence, where it was what everybody does, all other doors are closed off and nobody wants to talk about it. Okay? It's like the drunk uncle in the attic. I'm sorry to say that, right? Nobody talks about this person. Right? That family drunk. I shouldn't say that, I apologize for that. But there's people that you just don't talk about. Maybe there's salespeople. I know why. I apologize. And there you have it. And there you have it. All because a military recruiter took advantage of what my dream was. Yeah. That's how it all got started. Had he said, maybe, Gary, I can put you in there, but there's no guarantees. You may not get to go to college. You may want to look at something else if that's what you really want. Gary, is that really, what you really want deep down inside? Then maybe the military isn't for you. They'll never get that kind of honesty, right? They're going to put you in because their careers are at jeopardy. Let me put it that way here. Military recruiters aren't doing recruiting out of the goodness of their hearts. It's an assignment, right? And if you don't perform, it will negatively impact your career. I would really say, they said, make it or break it assignment. So as you're thinking about the military, do your homework. Your homework today is to just Google military recruiters and put anything out negative behind it. You can put on harassment, lies, sexual assaults, anything like that, and just see what pops up. And that's it. Successfully, my dogs, they behave themselves. They're out here, we're out here. They're sitting. My first time I'm using, probably the second time I'm using this setup. It helps me because I can use it on the go when things are hitting my head. So that's what the military recruiting is all about. And it's a connection. Everything is connection. And you remember that. And you guys who are thinking about going into the reserves, if you're close to that, your ETS, and you still got some time left on your service time of 8 years, remember every 8 years is what you're signing up for. How you do it, it's up to you, right? But anyways, if you're thinking about re-enlisting into the reserves and they're saying all those benefits, you might want to think twice about it, right? Because remember now, you're not in control of your life. It's probably better just to stay out of the military, just to, go in active ready reserves and just let it just fall there where it may. Let it roll out quietly. And you go inactive ready reserves, just IRR, and just let it roll out. And let's exit quietly, because the second time isn't always better in the military. Because now you're established, if you go reserves or National Guard, now you're established in your civilian life. And just when things are just going right for you, bam, military pops up. You're getting deployed. Bam, you have to go on an extended training exercise. Bam. And your job isn't guaranteed to be waiting for you when you get back. So all those lies, they tell you. The civilian jobs don't have to hold the position for you. All they have to do basically is change the category, and we don't need you no more. Google that. It happens. Anyways, until next time, do your homework, right? Sit down with a friend that you can trust and have an honest conversation. Look at all your options before you make that military decision. And remember, you have up to, I think you're 39 or 40 before you have to do it. But don't do it. If the country needs you, they'll draft you. Just understand that. My next episode we're going to be talking about how to improve your life without the military. Go from high school to college, high school to a job without the military connection. Talk to you later. Enjoy your day. And if you're so inclined to, I can always use another cup of coffee. Thank you very much. Feel free to buy me a coffee. Have a good day.